President Trump's TV lawyer again threatened Special Prosecutor Robert Mueller's investigation, telling Bloomberg, if he doesn't get it done in the next 2 or 3 weeks, we will just unload on him like a ton of bricks. I thought Rudy Giuliani already unloaded all of his bricks. And tonight, the Washington Post is reporting that the president's criminal defense lawyers are working on their legal research to fight all the way to the Supreme Court if Robert Mueller issues a subpoena to President Trump to testify to a grand jury. Rudy Giuliani told the Washington Post, we would move to quash the subpoena, and we're pretty much finished with our memorandum opposing a subpoena. By we, Giuliani, of course, means Emmett Flood, the president's real lawyer working on the legal case, who would actually represent Donald Trump in court while Rudy Giuliani silently watches. Rudy Giuliani outlined 3 possible scenarios of what happens next. Plan A is we somehow work out the questioning. Plan B is we don't, and they subpoena. Plan C is they file the report and don't issue a subpoena. Joining our discussion now, Jason Johnson, politics editor at TheRoot.com and an MSNBC contributor, and Jill Wine-Banks is back with us. And Jason Johnson, in the history of these kinds of investigations, presidents have always wanted to show they have nothing to hide. And that is part of why Bill Clinton ultimately ended up agreeing to testify rather than face a subpoena. But this president and Rudy Giuliani seem to have no problem communicating very clearly that he's got a lot to hide and a lot he doesn't want to talk about.
They're acting incredibly guilty. Yes. And the other problem here, Lawrence, is that they're pushing this issue. The reason that you usually end up volunteering and Clinton would sit down and talk to special prosecutors is you do not want to roll the die with the federal and constitutional crisis that might come from trying to resist a subpoena. Maybe you end up winning, and then you show presidential power is stronger than you thought, the executive is stronger than you thought, and you can't be subpoenaed until you leave office. But if you lose, if it becomes apparent to your political adversaries, to the opposing party, that a president can be subpoenaed while they're in office, it would destroy anything Trump ever wants to do. So they're playing chicken right now, and they really don't have much to grow with. It's not a good idea. He should probably just submit to the questions. And
Jill, once again, some incoherence from Rudy Giuliani. Investigation must be over by September 1st. But if there's a subpoena, we will fight it, which is months and months and months if it goes all the way to the Supreme Court.
Well, he's making up the rule about September 1st, and he's not in a position to make up that rule. They can go on until this investigation is completed, and of course, the Mueller team should do that. There's no reason to stop it, and there is a reason not to do something that would interfere with the midterms, which would be, for example, if he was going to return an indictment against the president or any other sitting person who's running for election in the midterms. That you wouldn't do in October or November, probably. But you could as soon as the election is over, and so there's no reason to put an end to it. And Giuliani just makes things up. He says things that are simply not true.
And today, John Brennan said that he believes that not only must the investigation continue, but it is obviously putting more and more pressure on Donald Trump, and perhaps that's part of the behavior we're seeing Donald Trump manifest publicly. Let's listen to what John Brennan said.
It's critically important that Bob Mueller and his team of investigators be allowed to continue their work unimpeded by Mr. Trump or anyone else in the administration. It's important that Rod Rosenstein stays in charge of that investigation from a Department of Justice oversight perspective. But clearly, I think Mr. Trump is getting more and more concerned, more and more desperate, I would say more and more frightened, as there is closer and closer magnification of some of the things that those around him have been involved in.
Jason, John Brennan knows a thing or two about Donald Trump, and he thinks he's frightened.
Oh, he's terrified. Look, I mean, first off, he's got to wait on pins and needles till tomorrow morning and find out what happens with Paul Manafort. Basically, if Manafort's found guilty, which seems highly likely at this particular point, I don't think the state would have brought the case if anything could win it, then he realizes that not only does that mean that one of his closest advisors is now going to be going to jail, but also that everybody else who will be caught in Mueller's net will probably just turn on him. So the president is extremely concerned about these things, and I don't think we can ever sort of underestimate the fact that he's looking at the polls, he's looking at the internal numbers, even if they have to write them in crayon in the White House, so he'll pay attention, and it looks like like Democrats may take the House. And if he thinks that Manafort and this investigation is bad now, wait until the Democrats in the House have oversight. He'll be in trouble every single week. That's why he really shouldn't be risking things with the subpoena right now. He should go in, try and get this done as fast as possible, because the Democrats will give him no quarter if they take over the House.
And Jill, do you remain confident that that Robert Mueller would prevail on a subpoena for testimony?
I am very confident on that. U.S. v. Nixon said that no one is above the law, including the president, and they allowed a subpoena for documents. And there's no real difference between making the president turn over incriminating tapes and making the president testify. Yes, there's a time issue for him to do both of those, and probably a little more for testimony. But a man who can play as much golf as this president does has enough time to prepare to be interrogated in any kind of situation before a grand jury. So I'm very sure that he would lose that one, and he would look really bad. And I think he is trying to just divert his recent episodes and this release about, that Omarosa is lying, and he's trying to divert attention. So he's now taken away the security clearance for John Brennan to divert attention from Omarosa. He is scared, and he has every reason to be scared because the evidence and the pieces of the puzzle are really fitting together.
Jill Wine-Banks and Jason Johnson, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
When we come back,